You know exactly how this specific maddening cycle feels. You have a simple doctor's appointment scheduled for 3 in the afternoon. You wake up at 8 in the morning with a massive, highly ambitious to-do list. You have 7 completely free, uninterrupted hours to clean the house, answer emails, and work on your project. But instead of being productive, you sit on the edge of your bed, entirely paralyzed. You check the clock, see that it is 9 in the morning, and you feel a strange heaviness. Your brain whispers that you do not have enough time to start anything meaningful before the appointment. So you pick up your phone, telling yourself you will just scroll for 5 quick minutes to wake up. Suddenly, you look at the clock again, and it is 2 in the afternoon. You have wasted the entire day waiting for one single event to happen. Society has a very harsh, incredibly judgmental diagnosis for this behavior. They tell you that you simply have terrible time management skills. They call you lazy, undisciplined, and completely incapable of prioritizing your own life. And after repeating this cycle enough times, you internalize that toxic shame completely. You look at the hours you wasted, and you hate yourself for being so dysfunctional. But today, I want to offer you a completely different, heavily researched biological diagnosis. You are not lazy, and you do not have a broken moral compass. You are suffering from a documented neurological phenomenon, commonly called waiting mode. To understand why your brain locks you in this invisible cage, we have to look at your executive function. Think of your working memory exactly like a small, highly organized physical workbench. When you want to answer an email, you bring the email tool onto the workbench. When you want to wash the dishes, you swap it out for the cleaning tool. For a neurotypical brain, swapping these tools is a fast, frictionless, and completely automatic process. But your brain processes information at a much higher, far more intense resolution. For you, context switching requires a massive, exhausting amount of metabolic energy. When you have an appointment at 3 in the afternoon, your brain treats it like a massive, heavy boulder. It places that boulder right in the absolute center of your mental workbench the moment you wake up. Your brain knows that you cannot miss this appointment, so it keeps the boulder highly visible. Because the boulder takes up 90% of your working memory, there is simply no room left. You physically do not have the cognitive space to bring out the tools needed to write an essay or clean a room. Your brain looks at the tiny sliver of empty space on the bench and realizes a terrifying fact. If you start a deep, complex task now, you will have to abruptly tear yourself away from it later. And to your highly sensitive nervous system, an abrupt context switch feels like a biological threat. It triggers a microdose of panic in your amygdala, the exact same way a physical danger would. Your brain prefers to avoid this painful psychological friction entirely. So it initiates a physiological response that trauma researchers call a functional freeze. It shuts down your executive function and puts your entire body into a protective power-saving mode. You are not sitting on the couch scrolling through your phone because you are fundamentally lazy. You are scrolling because scrolling requires absolutely zero space on the mental workbench. It is a low-energy holding pattern designed to keep you completely safe until the boulder is finally removed. This is why the exact moment your 3 o'clock appointment is over, a biological miracle suddenly happens. The boulder is lifted off the workbench, the heavy brain fog instantly evaporates, and you feel alive again. You suddenly have the energy to clean the entire kitchen and answered 20 emails in a single hour. Your intelligence was never the problem. Your biological fear of the context switch was paralyzing you. But living your life at the mercy of this functional freeze is completely exhausting. It turns a simple 1-hour errand into a highly toxic event that steals your entire day. So how do we actually bypass this broken alarm system and trick your brain into moving forward? We cannot rely on a strict schedule, because adding more time constraints just makes the anxiety significantly worse. Instead, we have to use a neurological workaround called context bracketing. Right now, your brain sees the time between waking up and the appointment as one single contaminated block of time. We need to physically and visually sever that connection so your amygdala feels safe to operate. First, you must completely externalize the burden of remembering the appointment. As long as you are keeping track of the time in your own head, the boulder is sitting on your workbench. You must set a very loud, highly disruptive alarm on your phone for exactly 1 hour before you need to leave. You must verbally tell yourself out loud that the machine is now holding the boulder for you. This sounds ridiculous, but speaking out loud engages a completely different neural pathway in your motor cortex. It actively proves to your subconscious that you no longer need to constantly monitor the threat. Second, you need to create a false, highly structured finish line to trick your nervous system. Your brain refuses to start a 3-hour task because it knows the appointment will violently interrupt it. So you must deliberately choose a micro-task that takes absolutely no more than 20 minutes to completely finish. You are not going to clean the entire house. Your only goal is to completely empty the dishwasher. You are not going to write a brilliant chapter. Your only goal is to write 3 terrible sentences. By making the task aggressively small, you guarantee that you can cross the finish line long before the appointment. This completely neutralizes the subconscious threat of the painful context switch. Your brain realizes there is no danger of being interrupted, so it finally releases the heavy, paralyzing parking brake. And this is where the actual biological magic of your nervous system finally happens. Once you empty the dishwasher and close the door, your brain gets a sudden, highly potent hit of dopamine. This is the chemical reward for fully completing a task and successfully closing a cognitive loop. That tiny rush of dopamine acts exactly like a chemical key, unlocking your paralyzed executive function. You suddenly find yourself wiping down the counters, taking out the trash, and answering a difficult email. You completely bypass the functional freeze simply by deliberately lowering the baseline of your expectation. The absolute hardest part of waiting mode is the deep, suffocating guilt you feel while it is happening. You sit on the couch actively hating yourself, watching the hours slowly slip away into absolutely nothing. But that heavy, familiar guilt actually makes the functional freeze significantly worse. It adds an incredibly dense layer of emotional shame to a problem that is purely mechanical and biological. You must completely stop treating your paralysis like a deep moral failure or a permanent character flaw. Your brain is just an incredibly powerful prediction machine running a faulty piece of outdated survival software. It is fiercely trying to protect you from the intense metabolic exhaustion of switching gears too quickly. When you finally understand this truth, the heavy shame naturally begins to dissolve and wash away. You finally stop fighting a brutal, utterly unwinnable war against your own sensitive nervous system. The next time you find yourself trapped in the waiting mode, staring blankly at the clock, just take a deep breath. Acknowledge the heavy boulder that your high-resolution mind has anxiously placed on your mental workbench. Do not try to forcefully shove it off, and do not hate yourself for feeling physically stuck to the couch. Set the alarm, externalize the threat, and hand the heavy burden of remembering completely over to the machine. Then give yourself radical permission to do one incredibly small, completely insignificant task. Trade the massive, overwhelming ambition for one tiny, highly manageable victory. Let that single drop of dopamine slowly unfreeze your paralyzed system and bring you back to life. You do not need to perfectly optimize every single hour of your rapidly changing, highly demanding life. You just need to learn how to gently navigate the beautiful, highly complex machinery of your own unordinary mind. Start incredibly small today, forgive yourself entirely for the lost hours, and I will see you in the next one.